Welcome to Behind the Barricade. I'm Jim Christian, founder and CEO of Cornerstone, and this is the podcast where we get into what really moves the needle on construction projects. Because here's the thing, construction productivity has been flat for decades. And yet, every now and then, you sit down with someone who's seen it from a different angle, and you walk away thinking, that changes how I look at this. And that's what today's conversation is all about. My guest is Philip Angel. Philip is the Director of Development at JM Zoning, part of the Melrose Consulting Group. And if you've ever tried to navigate a New York City permit, you already know that's no small title. Philip has spent his entire career mastering one of the most complex regulatory environments in North America. He's done multifamily ground up, affordable housing, institutional work. He's done it all, seen it all. Hundreds of projects, decades of relationships with people who hold the keys to actually getting a building approved. And here's what I love about Philip. He started as a poet. Yes, a poet who somehow ended up reading municipal code for fun. An interesting thing to do for fun. In this episode, Philip and I dig into a few things I think you're going to find really valuable. We talk about what he calls the magic wand, the one clients always assume he has, and what's actually behind it. The answer might surprise you. We get into the blame game. What happens when projects start to slip, when emails get siloed, and ownership quietly gets dropped from the chain, and the one move Philip makes every single time to stop it. And we have a real honest conversation about AI in this industry, where it actually helps, and where Philip thinks people are setting themselves up for, in what he says, a recipe for disaster. Whether you're a property owner, a developer, a project manager, or someone trying to get a complicated building across the finish line, there's something in this one for you. Now on to the episode. Hi, I'm Jim Christian, founder and CEO of Cornerstone. Welcome to Behind the Barricade, a podcast where we explore performance breakthroughs in the construction industry. Because the reality is, this is a complex industry. Projects are challenging, timelines are tight, expectations are high, but everyone, once in a while, a team has a breakthrough and does something that makes you stop and say, that's different. That's what this podcast is all about. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Philip Angel of JM Zoning, part of the Melrose Consulting Group. You're Director of Development at JM Zoning. So how did you get into zoning at the level that you're an expert at this from the time we spent together? And I look at zoning documents and I go, I don't want to touch those, but you're an expert at it. So how did you get to where you are today in the industry?
Well, thanks, Jim, for having me on and this opportunity to share kind of my journey and insights into the world. Well, so I went to school and got a degree in liberal arts. I learned how to read, think, and write. And I actually focused in poetry and creative writing.
Oh.
And as I kind of began my adulthood, couldn't make a lot of money writing poetry. So
I see a poem coming up?
Well, I don't think so. So though I did try to work on something about facade inspections, thinking that it was ripe for metaphor. In New York, we have something called SWARP, Safe with a Recommended Maintenance Program.
Okay.
And so I thought that might have been a good segue for
the start of a worldwide poem.
Right. But so I was looking around for part-time jobs and found one at a small architectural firm in Brooklyn that did mostly 1, 2, 3 family enlargements and new development. And I took to it. I took to reading the municipal codes, zoning, regulations, looking for loopholes so folks could build more floor area, that they could get more on their investment. And as time went on, I had more experience with commercial and community facility developments, supportive housing developments for homeless shelters and things like that. Had my own company for 7 years, joined as a principal of an architectural firm that also did this kind of consulting and filing representation, permit expediting in New York City. And joined JM Zoning in 2017. And JM Zoning specifically as a specialization in multifamily development and large adaptive reuse projects. So I was in my early 20s, having graduated with a liberal arts degree. So I could
Wow.
read, think, and write, but not much else. I got a part-time job working for an architect doing mostly 1, 2, 3 family development and enlargement.
Oh,
And that's where I kind of fell in love with the idea of getting approvals, of navigating both complex codes, zoning, helping explain that information to architects and folks who think more spatially and visually and didn't have the same facility with the code language. Back then, everything is digital now, but back then everything was approval stamps. And there's nothing better than taking, a roll of 200 plans and approved, approved, approved. It's very validating. And so I got hooked on that. And over the years, realized that the more that you know, and the more that you understand the municipal regulations and how the systems worked, the better you could navigate it. And that expertise was an enormously valuable asset for our clients.
Wow. And so how did you move from that like what was your next step after some time at that
So while I was working for that architect, I started to build up a portfolio of clients and that I would do other than that architect and kind of give him a cut for rent and overhead.
Okay.
Eventually, I joined Municipal Expediting, which is a small kind of boutique firm in the city that specializes in universities and hospitals. And it definitely had a more corporate and kind of sophisticated position in the industry in the city. From there, I opened up my own shop and
Oh,
at
cool.
Philip Angel Expediting for about 7 years. And then from there went to join Support for Architects and Michael Zinrich Architects, where I became a principal, then joined JM Zoning in 2017.
Wow.
And JM Zoning is unique. JM Zoning now is a sister company of Millrose, as you mentioned, but it's unique in the sense that we specialize in multifamily ground up development, doing a lot of affordable housing, in
Wow.
addition to commercial work, institutional work, large adaptive reuse, large scale alterations and major changes. And
Wow.
every job is a puzzle. And I love it. I love trying to figure out how to suit the property's limitations with the ownership's and design team's goals.
It is a puzzle, all these
Yeah.
little pieces. Yeah. So your title is Director of Development. So we were chatting about what that is in your role. Maybe just give us a little description about what that title means, JM Zoning,
Sure.
compared to what other people might think of as Director of Development.
Right. It's confusing, and a lot of folks think that I do something with programming and computers. So our office and our project management teams are divided into two main divisions. One, development, which comprises several existing project managers who specialize in existing buildings, tenant improvements, changes of use, and then new building teams that do ground up. And we do, and mostly mixed use and multifamily, some high rise. And so the development division at JM Zoning reviews plans, marks up plans, interfaces with the Department of Buildings and a lot, alphabet soup of New York City agencies.
Right.
And until we get approvals and permits on behalf of the general contractors. At that point, project management leads move to a kind of construction operations team that
Okay.
coordinates inspections and Department of Transportation, construction operation permits, after hours variances, etc.
So it moves through
And
moves from
eventually
development.
we'll work directly, to get the temporary certificates of occupancy,
Right.
final CO, and all municipal sign-offs.
Well, it's certainly comforting for me to hear you call New York City's permitting development process alphabet soup, because I don't know it. I know a little bit of it, but for an expert like you to call it alphabet soup, I feel
Sure.
affirmed that it's okay for me to be confused.
There are a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of lingo. And if you're inside baseball talks, folks start talking about the PW1 and the LAA and the DEP and DOB. And unless you know what you're listening to, it's a bunch of gobbledygook.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And you've spent your whole career in New York City, basically.
Yes,
Like
yes.
that's your
Mhm.
expertise, New York City.
So
Awesome.
Melrose, I mean, JM Zoning is one of several Melrose family companies, and we offer permitting, municipal compliance, and some A&E work throughout the country and all 50
Right.
states.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Well, we've had some great experiences with Melrose over the years, and always look forward to working with Melrose when we get an opportunity in our project management division. So, you've seen all kinds of projects over the years. And what this podcast is all about is trying to figure out what makes a project productive, what really happens to make a project be on time, on budget, all those kinds of things that are open that we're chasing, because the reality is construction productivity really has been flat for a couple of decades despite all the innovations and all the things that we've seen. But from your perspective, you're very early in a project, you're seeing things before it's got a slow heartbeat maybe, or some dreaming going on, but
Uh-huh.
you've seen a lot of it over the years. So what do you see as the secret sauce or the secret ingredients to a project being productive and successful?
Sure. Well, I think the easiest answer to that question is that you get all of the various stakeholders and design consultants on the same page. And how do you do
Mm,
that? Right. I think with a sophisticated matrix of information, items, and tasks that are required, responsibility, and obstacles, comments to that, that's updated in real time and sent regularly to the clients. Now, on our side of kind of the municipal clients, we've worked very hard to kind of develop those kind of sophisticated tools that are driven by web-based project management tools and can easily identify who's responsible and if something has been received, if it's still outstanding. So on our side of the fence, we make it clean as possible. On the kind of design developer partnership, you really need folks who take responsibility seriously, who read the matrices that we send out, that are not waiting for a weekly meeting where it's shared and then depending on us to kind of go through every item and explain it. So jobs that have a very engaged lead project manager on kind of ownership developer side, and that could also be kind of an owner's rep firm for non-developers, major capital improvement projects. So if they're engaged and are educated and are trying to understand the issues as they come up, then I think that makes for a successful project. Also, to listen to the consultants that they've hired. I have a lot of clients that will jump through a lot of hoops just to get a denial because they're not satisfied with the itch being scratched until they've officially someone saying, no, you can't do it. So there's a lot of things. Well, that's what that person needs psychologically to move on to phase B or plan B. But 6 months ago, we told you they're not going to approve this. You need to come up with a different design. But we'll spend 6 months exploring something because they are dead set that that's what they want. And sometimes that makes sense. Sometimes it's worth the Hail Mary, the 50-50. If you get this, your bottom line is going to increase significantly for 30 years to come in the future, you know?
right.
Um, and everybody's a little bit different, right?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah. When you are doing this matrix,
Mhm.
do you find that people do engage with it, or is it a bit of pulling teeth at times?
They do. I mean, some are better at it than others, right? One of the obstacles to a project working well are when project stakeholders rely on their design consultants to police other design consultants. So, for
Mm,
instance, when we circulate a kind of a matrix with everything that needs to be done, and then we circulate individual emails for certain applications. Let's take a foundation or supportive excavation filing. Certain things need to be done. Fees need to be paid because these are now all online applications. The
right.
applicant of record has to log on and certify, complete their attestations. Those are actions that we can't take on behalf of our
Mm,
clients, right? We're not going to log in as them to
right.
complete the actions that they need to take, right,
Right.
as stakeholders. So one of the things that happens over and over again is we're sending out these matrices. We're sending out individual emails. Everybody is copied. There's very directly, please log on, and nothing is happening. And we'll follow up and we'll flag, but at a certain point, that's not our job. Right? Somebody has to be making sure that all of the people whose bills they're paying does what they've been hired to do. That happens from time to time, and we have to have a frank conversation. And I will. I'll call up the principal of a company. I'll say, if you want to be successful, let's have a conversation with who's running your project right now.
What are some common factors that you see from your perspective?
Well, right now, one of the things that we're dealing a lot with that's outside of our control are regulatory changes. So
Mm,
we recently had a big push to get projects filed before March 30th to be vested under the 2020 New York City Energy Conservation Code. And now the 2025 code is in effect as of April 1st, and it's much more strict, right? So a lot of jobs that went in to get vested under were somewhat incomplete. So we're going to have a little bit of a harder time dealing with objections that were issued because they were a little bit half-baked what was submitted because we needed it
right.
vested. And then now we've got a new set of codes that the industry is slowly getting their handle on of how that affects their design. And so the other issue is it's bureaucracy, right? We all
Right.
want our municipal bureaucracies to move faster than they do. And there's no magic wand. A lot of folks want to believe that, oh, you're the most expensive expediter. You've got this reputation. We hired you because we want you to wave your magic wand and get an approval. Right. So it kind of goes back to, you hired us to be experts, listen to what we recommend to do. And moving against what we recommend is, if that makes sense for the project and that's a goal that you want to have, fine. But if that sets your schedule back 6 months, that's something that you have to own. It's something we can't fix.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying on your desk there isn't a magic wand being charged right now?
No, I mean, our to the extent that a magic wand exists, it's working several decades to establish relationships of integrity with civil servants and nurturing relationships where those gatekeepers who have the keys to this job being approved or permitted are not treated like obstacles to what you want, but from the simplest clerk who's handling kind of a permit renewal, and that's behind some kind of HTML platform wall and is disembodied or is an email. It's very easy under high pressure deadlines to being under that pressure to kind of shift that pressure onto municipal folks to try to get them. And that's not successful.
Yeah.
It's not successful. Right.
What's your perspective
I
on
think
that?
that's true for many projects. And that's why I try to, when we distribute our kind of weekly updates, for instance, with a project matrix, and we'll have a weekly call. Some of the things that we try to do is say, we want to join at the head of the call. We want to be on for 5, 10, 15 minutes at tops, high level going through where things stand. If you have any questions about an outstanding item, ask it then, and then we're off. But when we deliver that, please make yourself familiar with this matrix prior to the call so that our time is used as efficiently as possible. And some do and some don't. And I think that when we definitely recognize when we have a good relationship with a kind of partner and we recognize that they are doing a good job and making our jobs easier, we certainly recognize and heap praise upon those folks, because an engaged partner who is really trying to understand what all of the items that are outstanding and how it fits and is listening to the advice that we give when they ask questions, there is nothing better than that. I mean, that is what changes everything. Somebody who is patient, somebody who doesn't fly off the handle, though we certainly have a lot of those clients as well.
When we were chatting last week, you talked about when you see some projects get deteriorating from a productivity point of view. I think you called it the blame game
Sure.
is yeah. So what do you see happening there? And what do you think's the best way to overcome that or combat that or solve that problem?
Again, I think it's about getting everybody on the same page. It's not
Mm,
having siloed conversations.
mm,
It's not like, there's a certain architectural firm that we work with all the time that has a habit of dropping ownership off the email when they're sending us an email. And I've started very clearly in replying to your email, I'm adding ownership back on for full visibility. Because
right.
we got burned and we've got people blaming us for not informing the architect of certain restrictions
Right.
and an application filing strategy. And we'll dig up the emails. Here's where it was shown. And we don't ever like being in an adversarial relationship with our fellow design consultants and
Right.
ownership. And so it's about managing expectations. Everyone's on the same page. If they want to go in a certain direction, make sure that they understand the consequences and implications and get
Right.
buy-in. Now, they still may come back and say, well, you told us X, Y, or Z, and that's not what worked out. And I say, well, we didn't say,
Yeah.
right? But
One of the things that we try to do, one of our core values is treat others the way we want to be treated. So, in that kind of scenario, we would often call the project partner saying, "Hey, we're going to send this email, and owners are going to be involved in the email, but we just want to give you a heads up. This is the background on it." And sometimes we can get that sorted out instantly, and it gets resolved over the phone call. But I always try to make sure
sure.
that they know the shot's coming across the bow and that they might
Absolutely.
be
I
the
think the
one.
first time it happened, I called them, I called this
Yeah,
particular project I'm thinking about, and they keep doing it. They just keep
yeah,
send us
yeah,
and sometimes it makes sense for design consultants to reach out kind of back channel and
yeah.
this something's coming up. Can you take a look at it before we create a big problem and raise a red flag for
Exactly.
ownership? Let's verify that it really is a problem. Right? That
Yeah,
makes
for sure.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, what are you paying attention to as far as trends in the industry? Like, what are you thinking from a productivity point of view? How to
Sure.
improve productivity, and what are you keeping an eye on? What are you concerned about? What are you excited about?
So we talked about this when we spoke earlier about AI
Mm,
and AI's role, and everyone's talking about AI. And we have started to use it in kind of limited applications and are working kind of develop. Think it's going to be very, very helpful for high level feasibility studies to be able to
mm,
kind of take a certain property and train the agent to go through open applications, open violations, existing certificates of occupancy, understand the zoning district that it's mapped within, what those limitations on use and bulk are, and come up with a report that is helpful. It's not necessarily going to be accurate. Like it's going to be 80 to 99% accurate, and you have someone that kind of so it'll get a lot of work done that needs to
right.
clean up, and so it will help efficiency. And what we talked about are folks letting AI do their thinking for them. People who are non-experts suddenly thinking that they can use this to sound like an expert or to provide the expert information that they normally would have relied on someone else. And I think that's really hit and miss. Sometimes I mentioned that often in a conversation, someone who's kind of a non-subject matter expert will love to tell me what I should use AI to do. And I get a little frustrated with that because I've worked very hard to learn what I've learned and to do the thinking. And the thinking through a problem, coming up with a filing strategy, it's very important. Going through those steps, putting in a question and getting an answer spit out in a recommendation that you didn't do yourself, go through the ins and outs of what might be an advantage, what might be a pro, a con, etc. To me, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it may not have a good
Yeah,
ending.
yeah.
Yeah, so it is a something that we need to try to figure out. How do we use it? Where is it effective? How does it help? I kind of sometimes look at AI as it's just a person on staff that I can use. It's just like everybody, you got to process it. You got to think yourself through whatever you're asking it to do. Yeah, it's amazing. So from your perspective, Philip, what do you see? Like, if you could tell people in this industry, hey, we as an industry need to look at this situation, this problem, this opportunity to help improve productivity across the board. Does anything come up in your mind to say, hey, as an industry, we need to be really paying attention to and focusing in on this particular topic? I don't know if you've got one, but just
Hmm.
wanted that.
Well, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind, and I'm not sure necessarily, I think that, I see this general trend of companies growing, being bought, expanding,
Mm,
backed by private equity. And this is through the construction industry, it's through A&E, it's through Milrose and JM Zoning, and certainly health. Throughout the American industry, North American industry, this is what we're facing.
yeah.
Having worked for most of my career for large family-owned companies where the person in the top of that seat was themselves a subject matter expert, and
Mm,
building their clientele and their business through their own expertise and intimate knowledge of the industry itself, growth and expansion puts a little bit of a disconnect. I think that in order to have national growth and expansion at scale and all of those things, what ends up happening is that the employees who are providing the service, the project managers, are now spending a large part of their day translating their forecasting their revenue, forecasting risk, to leadership who are not as familiar with the industry because they've kind of
mm,
come from other adjacent kind of corporate worlds, and they have the needed experience to run these very large, national, multinational
right.
industries. And so how do you account for that? The kind of visibility. And so I think that comes into kind of building more sophisticated project management software that is easier to use. The big issue with all of this is there are so many moving pieces. If you're looking at
Mm,
any kind of a ground up development, there are so many different applications that are subordinate to the main general construction, and there are other agency requirements. There's so much that needs to be handled that
right.
need a tool that can easily do what we say is identify risk, identify responsibility, identify the next action item required, and make it very simple for that person who is responsible to understand what they need to do.
So to really continue to focus as an industry on development of platforms or systems that allows for transparency, but also allows for accountability, timelines. There's so many of them around, but how do we continue to improve them and
Right.
improve them and improve them
Right. I
to,
mean, we still use them from time to time, but want to get away from the Excel spreadsheet. I want to
yeah,
get away from something that you save and manually update. And then so I want like something that is a PDF that is slick, that is generated from a platform where you can say, I'm looking for this asbestos test investigation report. And I've
right.
received it. We mark the day that it was received, and then that information is translated into the next report that's sent out. And it's easy, and folks who are in leadership positions who are responsible for managing all of these teams, it's very easy for them to understand, even though they might not have a specific experience with the industry, where are we at risk, where are we successful, what's working and what's not.
Yeah, it is a complex matrix, isn't
Yeah.
it? To try to figure out how do we get what we need, how do we see what we need to see, and how does all that bubble up to whatever level needs to see it. And if, as to your point earlier, if the person or the team at the top isn't subject matter experts in the industry, it even adds another complexity to the situation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Philip, it's been great to have you on the podcast.
Well,
Thanks for all your wisdom and sharing it, and taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to
email is
connect
the
with you?
best way. I am on LinkedIn, but pangel@jmzoning.com will get to me, and and eager to share more insights into New York City permitting and to meet your audience. So thank you,
Yeah.
Jim, for this opportunity. It's really fun.
Well, you're so welcome, and I know who I'll be calling the next time we got a project in New York for sure, for sure. Well, thanks everyone for listening and tuning in to Behind the Barricade. At Cornerstone, we believe construction is about more than just delivering projects. It's a complicated thing, but it really does come down to creating a better journey for our clients, our teams, our project partners, and ultimately the world. So this podcast is part of that. We hope you find this conversation helpful. Maybe you've picked up an idea that you might be able to do performance differently in future projects based on Philip's wisdom and insights. So thanks again, Philip, and we look forward to connecting in the near future.
Thank you, Jim. You're very welcome. All the best.
So that was Philip Angel. And before we wrap up, I want to pull out a few things from the conversation that really struck home with me. First, the magic wand. Philip said something I think every owner and developer needs to hear. There is no magic wand. Or if there is one, it's not a shortcut. It's decades of integrity, decades of relationships, and treating people on the other end of the process like partners, not obstacles. That applies whether you're dealing with New York City permit clerk or a project partner across the table from you. The shortcut isn't a shortcut. The relationship is the work. The second point, the matrix. Philip kept coming back to this idea that productive projects come down to one thing: getting every stakeholder on the same page in real time with real ownership of every action item. And he made a point I want to underline. He said the projects that go off the rails are usually the ones being managed inside a weekly call. The work needs to happen outside of that meeting and between those meetings. If you take one thing into your next project from this episode, let it be that. And third, and this is for everybody right now, AI is not going to do your thinking for you. Philip was really thoughtful on this. He's using it. He sees a value, but he was clear that the moment people start thinking it replaces expertise instead of supporting it, that's when you get yourself in trouble. The thinking is our job. The judgment is our job. AI is a tool, not a substitute. Now, before we go, if any of that has landed for you, if you got something useful out of this episode, I want to ask you a quick favor. Take 30 seconds and leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to the podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you use. And here's why it matters. The podcast exists to help people in our industry build better, build smarter, and stop repeating the same mistakes that have kept productivity flat for decades. And the only way conversations like the one you just heard reach the people who need them, the project managers, the developers, the owners, trying to figure this out, is if the listeners like you help us out there. A rating moves us up. A review tells the next person it's worth their time. That's it. That's the whole thing. Thanks again to Philip Angel for coming on and being so generous with his expertise. If you want to connect with Philip, you can find him on LinkedIn. And thank you for spending part of your day with us. At Cornerstone, we believe that construction is about more than just delivering projects. It's about creating a better journey for our clients, our teams, our project partners, and ultimately the world. This podcast is part of that. I'm Jim Christian. This has been Behind the Barricade.